A key focus for VCF operations for logs was completing the convergence of standalone UI capabilities into VCF operations and deprecating the logs UI. In 9.1, all the logs capabilities are now integrated within VCF operations. So users can centrally manage log configuration from one single place within VCF operations. There have been numerous tech upgrades as well, with the goal to ensure that the logs platform supports the demand for the modern day log management use cases. So it leverages OpenSearch for logs indexing and log persistence. It runs in VCF Service Management Platform as a service and is an integral part of VCF operations. So let us start with the installation workflow. So logs management component is not part of the day zero VCF installation flow. So customer first deploys VCF through the VCF installer and then logs into VCF operations to perform day-end tasks like installing the logs component. So here we have logged into VCF operations, and when we click on logs, we see that logs component is not installed. So once we click here, it will take us to the build section where whole lifecycle operations are done. So logs is now a VMSP service which runs in VCF Service Management Platform, and all its lifecycle functions like deploy, patching, upgrades, resizing persistent volumes are based on VMSP workflows. So here we select logs component from the dropdown. The installation wizard requires at least one FQDN and IP reservation. For the brownfield scenarios, there is an option to import configuration from an existing 8.x logs cluster by providing FQDN and admin credentials. So here we provide the FQDN for the log service and provide the sizing, which is determined by t-shirt size. So if we select medium, we can see the number of replicas and the resource requirements. If we select large, we can see the resource requirement for large cluster. So in this case, we are going to select small size logs component and do the installation. So in this guy, click on next and submit. So once we submit the installation request, we can track the status by getting into the task section. So you can track the entire workflow for the logs component installation. So we see that the task is completed and logs component is successfully installed. So now if we go to components, you see that logs management service is installed. Under actions, we can see different scaling operations. So all of its lifecycle functions like scaling can be performed here. We can increase the storage size here and also generate support bundles during troubleshooting scenarios. And also the on-off operations can be performed from this page. Now, as the logs component is installed, next step is to enable log collection. So we enable log collection by getting into operate, administration, integrations, and the VCF accounts tab. So here we make sure that all the vCenter accounts has the log collection enabled. Same thing for NSX as well, also for the workload domain. So here we see that logs collection is enabled. So now under configurations, we see a new section called logs management, which contains various tiles to manage and fine-tune logs management component. So this includes new features as well as capabilities based on convergence from previous versions. The logs collection tile allows us to configure log sources, manage agents, agent groups, and set virtual load balancers. The log sources page lists all the VCF components that are configured for log collection. So you can see the NSX managers that are configured for log collection. We can see the VCF operations with the log collection details. So let's get back to the vCenter. Here we see some additional options where we can edit log configuration. We can set different log filtering levels. We can define custom fields to tag logs originating from specific files for easier filtering within the analyze page. We can update the different logs configuration. We can enable disable logs configurations. Same thing can be done for ESX as well as for the vSphere supervisors that are configured within the vCenter. As part of the convergence capability, we see the agents tab, which allows us to configure logs agents for the workload VMs and applications from within VCF operations. The good thing is all the VCF components have the logs agents installed by default as part of the day zero operation. So here we can monitor the agent status, the events that have been sent, uptime, and also the status of the agents. Then we can manage authentication secrets, which are used for authenticating with VCF operations. The log agent can be downloaded from Broadcom support portal to install on the application VMs. Then we have the agent group configuration. So agent group allows you to apply similar configurations to specific subset of agents. For example, here we have agent group created for Oracle application where we're looking for all the hosts with identical host names. And then we have a specific agent configuration. So for example, you might want to group all the log management Oracle application agents separately from the any other database application agents. Then we have the integrated load balancer, which allows you to manage the IP and DNS addresses of their log management deployments. So you can basically segregate logs based on different tenants based on the text field. So we also see the saved queries. So this saved queries widget is basically enhanced as part of the convergence capabilities. We have more out of the box saved queries now to use within the logs analyze tab. Users also have the flexibility to build new custom queries and save here. So under configuration, we also have the field library governance. So this is a new feature that got added in 9.1 for optimization and to improve platform performance. It lets us view all the fields that are categorized as indexed and non-indexed. So by default, system-defined fields mandatory for the system are marked as indexed. Custom fields from ingested logs that are not known to the system are marked as non-indexed and discovered. So users now have the option to select or to manually index a discovered field for faster query times. So in this case, I'm selecting the cluster field and enabling the indexing. As part of the convergence, we see additional widgets like the log forwarding. So log forwarding tab enables forwarding a selected set of logs based on filter criteria to a third-party endpoint. So users can also forward logs consumed at the receiving end for bucketization. Then under configuration, we also have the external storage widget. So here we can configure external storage for legacy, import, export, large logs, and also for log archival for compliance and regulatory needs. So customers do archive logs for like 5 years and 7 years, and sometimes maybe more. So when you configure external storage, you can add, edit, mount, and delete both NFS and S3 storage types. So here we support S3 and NFS storage type. In this case, we have an S3 storage configured like min.io in this case. And again, it's not limited to AWS S3. The log processing widget includes all the convergence capabilities like log masking, where you can mask critical fields or text for security sensitivity. So this is useful for removing sensitive information. Then we have the log filtering, which allows you to filter or remove unwanted logs based on filter criteria. Useful when endpoints like syslogs cannot filter logs. And then we have the log partition option. This is logical segregation of logs based on various criteria such as retention, routing, and filtering. For each partition, the retention period can be defined, the status active inactive is shown, and the rules are evaluated from top to bottom, allowing for changing the order. So in this case, we have the NSX logs where we have set the retention period, and also we have enabled the archive location and defined the storage path as well. So we have archived the NSX logs to the S3 bucket. Now under log partition, we see a new option to import logs stored on external storage S3 or NFS to make them available for querying and analysis. So here we're going to import the archived logs which are stored on S3 bucket. So I'll give a name here. I'll select the source as min.io, give the storage path and also the date at which we had archived these logs and import. So now we are importing the logs from the archived location. So now if I go to the logs analyze page and under partitions, you'll see the archived logs. So here I have only the log coming from the imported archived location for analysis and to compare. So we can also compare logs. So here I'm going to select logs from the current date. These are all the NSX logs. And then I'll add another query to select logs from the archived location, select the date and compare. So now I'm able to compare the NSX logs from the archived location with the current ones. So this is useful during the troubleshooting scenarios. Now there are also new capabilities that got added under log administration under the control panel access control. So under scopes, when you click on add, you see that we can now assign log dataset. So dataset allows defining restrictions on which specific set of data a user can access. So you can define a filter here. In this case, I'm selecting application name as NSX. So here I'm setting a scope where I can restrict logs or to a specific application team like NSX team who are only interested in viewing only NSX logs. The roles also have been enhanced to include log pages and all other aspects within the access control list. So if you go to access control, roles, add, and search for logs, so you can see like we have better RBAC control for managing logs configuration. There are also optimization improvements. So if you go to global settings and system settings, so now customers have options to enforce or disable SSL for syslog and API injection through system settings, controlling which ports are exposed. Also, we see a newer option to enable or disable event processing for event types and trends for log analysis. So disabling this feature will improve the performance. Also, a new logs service health dashboard is introduced for monitoring and troubleshooting logs service. So if you go to VCF Operations, so you'll see a new logs management health overview dashboard. So here we can see like it is structured around 4 sections. That is alerts, ingestion, retention, availability, and operational async to detect any operational issues within the logs service. The logs analysis page also has received workflow related and changes and fine tuning to make it more usable and easier to consume the service. So under fields, you can see there is a new field called SDComp ID. So we'd like to highlight that there are some day zero logs which are already flowing from the VCF components to the platform, and those can be searchable by this filter. So here you can get a breakup of logs by ESX, by VMware species component, by ops, NSX. So you can get a breakup of logs by all VCF components. You also have an option to export the event results in JSON format or any other format, and you can export it locally or to external storage. A number of public APIs are now grouped and are available under the Build, Developer Center, and API SDK section. So here you can access all the logs management APIs for using with your automation tools. So this concludes the demonstration of the logs capabilities within VCF Operations. So in this demo, we saw as part of convergence, all the log management capabilities are now integrated within VCF Operations. Then we have centralized log agent configurations for efficient management, new ability to import archived logs stored on external storage like S3 or NFS into VCF Ops to make them available for querying and analysis. Also new features to faster query times and improve the platform performance, and centralized log configurations of all VCF components and new troubleshooting dashboards for monitoring and troubleshooting logs component.